Middle of the country, but not middle of the road opinions. It's the podcast dedicated to sports in the air capital of the world.
I'm going to Wichita.
Wichita, Kansas, and beyond. With Tommy Castor, Weston Mills, and Blake Cripps. This is Keeper of the Games.
Some may say that we are wildly unqualified. Some may say we are only mildly entertaining. I say we are exactly where we need to be, talking Shocker softball, hanging another championship banner. Yeah, it actually happened, and if you actually think about it, they won pretty much everything else that they could have won this past weekend. With that, we welcome you to the Keeper of the Games podcast. We're hoping to hang our own banner someday as the best podcast talking Wichita sports in and around and of interest to Wichita, Kansas. I am your host, Blake Cripps. We are joined once again by Tommy Castor. And Tommy, I know that Weston will really appreciate this, but you actually texted me this week and said that you actually won a long-standing debate with your wife, standing up for men everywhere. Congratulations. You know what? I'm proud of you, and it was a battle well worth waging for you.
Well, thank you very much, Blake. I appreciate that. Yeah, it was a battle that was, several years in the making. There is a local fast food Mexican restaurant in Wichita called El Gordo. I believe it used to be in an old Taco Tico location on the east side of Wichita, right along Central Avenue, just east of Greenwich. And I love that place. And I could never get my wife to admit that she liked it. And finally, it was just the other night, I picked some up on the way home, and she admitted that she actually liked it. So
why'd she fight you on that?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think that, when you rank it amongst other Mexican restaurants, I don't know if you want to admit that you like a fast food Mexican restaurant over the other fine Mexican establishments in the Wichita metro area. But I finally broke down those walls. I broke down that barrier, and I was able to strike a blow for men everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. Weston, when's the last time you won an argument with your wife?
That's on the nightly. She's made it clear that she doesn't listen to this podcast, so I'm going to go ahead and answer that as pretty much daily. Yeah, that's pretty much. Plus, she went to Friends. We've already been over this. That that already discredits her right there. Well,
you had her.
Yeah.
You had her kid. You're having a kid with her.
Well, I met her at Denim and Diamonds, so I was fooled by that rhinestone saddle that they used to have at the old Denim and Diamonds there at the Town West Mall. It's a romantic place that you just can't help yourself.
What were you getting at Denim and Diamonds?
No, it's a bar in the. It's a country western bar in the mall.
I had this vision in my head of Weston showing up to purchase like some rhinestone encrusted cowboy boots. And I was like, yeah, that actually fits Weston.
No, I was actually there to purchase mini Coors Lights, I think.
Fair enough. Well, this is episode number 67 of the Keeper of the Games podcast, and you can get us in very many ways and places. The best way to follow us, of course, is on our website, KOGsports.com, Facebook.com/Keeper of the Games. And if you want to get in touch with us, best way to reach out to us is on Facebook, send us a message, or at KOGpod on Twitter. Your best source for the podcast is always KOGpod.podomatic.com, but we're pretty much anywhere. You can get the audio on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Google, Apple, Stitcher, many, many more. And you can also watch the videos on Facebook and on YouTube if you dare. Coming up in the show today, the Wind Surge on opening night. It's in the books, but not everything is rosy for the Wind Surge. And Kansas City Royals baseball stinks. But we will begin today with Wichita State Shocker softball, your winners of the 2021 American Athletic Conference Softball Tournament Championship, beating Tulsa 9-4 in the semifinals, and they win the championship over Central Florida 7-4. They're 39-11. It's their first ever AAC tournament title. Third conference tournament title in program history. They're headed to the Norman Regional of the NCAA tournament. Shocks are ranked number 24 in the country. Riley Buck, Bailey Lang, Buck, by the way, a Wellington product, local product, Madison Paragon, Sydney McKinney, Addison Barnard, all named to the all-tournament team. Sydney McKinney earlier in the week was named the Player of the Year for the conference. Kaylee Hecker was the Defensive Player of the Year for the conference. Addison Barnard was the American Rookie of the Year in the conference. And Christy Breadbenner, and this is lame because in the American, they call it the Coaching Staff of the Year. That's stupid, so I'm going to call it what it is. She was the American Coach of the Year 4 Shockers on the first team All AAC. Second team All AAC, the Shockers had 3. Tommy, they pretty much cleaned it up. They needed to rent another bus for all the trophies and hardware they brought back to Wichita. And what a way to cap it off for the weekend, winning the American Athletic Conference Tournament Championship and cementing their ticket into the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, a lot of hardware to take home for this Shocker softball squad. And not just a lot of hardware, a lot of well-deserved hardware for this team. This is a special Wichita State program, and it has been, all season long, and really even before that, when Coach Bredbender was starting to plant the seeds and build this program and put the pieces in place. This has been several years in the making for Shocker softball for sure. They were able to realize it, obviously, with the regular season crown, and then of course winning the tournament championship. It's kind of a good news, bad news situation for Shocker softball, and I'm sure this is something, Blake, that we'll get into in just a few minutes. But the fact that the Shockers got their number 2 seed, something that I'm sure that a lot of Shocker fans were absolutely clamoring for and desiring, that's great news. But also they find themselves in the Norman Regional with a potential chance to take on that incredibly dominant Oklahoma Sooners team, who the Shockers fell to in a run rule game, the final regular season outing of the year just a couple of weeks ago. So, kind of a good news, bad news situation for the Shockers. They're in the NCAA Regional. They've got a pretty tough draw, though. So you've got to wonder, exactly what sort of strategy is going to be drawn up for this Shocker softball squad. Obviously, Wichita State has to get through, I believe it's Texas A&M in the opening matchup in the NCAA Regional before they can potentially get to Oklahoma. You would think that that's probably what's going to end up happening for Wichita State. It's going to be a challenge for sure, but it's not a completely unknown challenge for the Shockers. They've seen the Sooners before. They know who they are. It's just a matter of can they put on a better game plan than they did just a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing is, they get that rematch with Oklahoma, and I kind of go back to what I said a couple weeks ago. This team seems like in big moments they've really rise to it, and we talked about it then, and they continued to win some big games following that. Obviously, as we talked about, Oklahoma was a big game that they did come up short on, but how do you respond? They've shown that they've been responding. Now they get that ultimate chance to respond, come back against this Oklahoma team that, frankly, they got embarrassed by, and to have that opportunity to take them on, moving on into the tournament. And the thing is, it sucks that the draw happens to get Oklahoma so early, and obviously I know we're bypassing Texas A&M because that is the first matchup on May 21st there at 5 on ESPN2, but look, they're going to get this rematch, and they were eventually, if Wichita State wants to do what their goal is and win a national championship, they're going to have to go through this Oklahoma team at some point. Whether it's now, later, or the other, more than likely anyways, right? You can't, it's always unpredictable, but Oklahoma being the very good favorite, you're either going to have to beat Oklahoma
really good.
or a team just as, close to as good as Oklahoma, so you might as well just take them on now. And I love the fact that they've can kind of assess what happened last time and have that chance to get that revenge, if you will. So, it's a tough draw. It really is, but I don't think it puts them in any worse position than anything else. Frankly, I think they just got to go play their softball and do what they have shown that they can do all season.
One thing, Tommy, that I am worried about a little bit, this Shocker team has been very reliant, and we have kind of been in awe of these ladies because they hit so many home runs. I think they in Oklahoma, at the time that they played, were the number 1 and number 2 home run hitting teams in the country. Is Wichita State too reliant on the home run? When Wichita State does not hit a home run, they're 4-7-1 this year. Now, if they hit a dinger, they're 35-4, and if they hit 2 home runs or more, they're 28-2, and if they hit 3+ home runs, you can pretty much forget about it. They've had one-run game in all the 3+ homer games. So basically, if the Shockers get to 3 or more home runs, you can pretty much just start warming the bus up because you don't have a chance. But Oklahoma was a team that did hold them out, held them without a home run. They're going to have to figure out a way to score some runs. Oklahoma has, we talk about how good Wichita State's pitching is, and rightfully so. They've got Bailey Lang. They've got a fantastic second option. Oklahoma's got great pitchers. They have had fantastic pitching pretty much every year that they have been nationally relevant. I can't think of a single team. There probably is one team. We're not covering Oklahoma on this podcast, so I'm not apologizing for not knowing, but there's probably been one or two teams where they didn't have the tippy top pitching. They've got pretty much outstanding pitching this year, Tommy. And so is Wichita State going to have to find a way to put runs together and string hits together against an Oklahoma team that just frankly doesn't give up many base runners? That's a question. I don't know if you're going to be able to count on multiple homers against this Oklahoma pitching staff. I don't know. Like Weston said, I don't like Wichita State's chances. I'm not saying that Wichita State's going to show up scared. I'm not even saying that they're going to get beaten like they did last time. But Oklahoma is so good, so dominant at every phase of the game. I believe it's going to take something special to beat them. And I guess the next step for the Shockers is to get to a point where you host a regional, and so you don't have to play Oklahoma, because I believe, and I may be wrong, but I believe that a lot of these seedings are done geographically to give the host team an advantage, because they're hosting on their home field in Norman, obviously the Sooners are, but they're trying to limit travel costs for what is typically for many schools not a revenue sport. So what I'm looking at is, if we're seeing Wichita State continue on this trajectory, and look at all the young talent on this team, there's no reason to think that Wichita State isn't going to be the American Athletic Conference preseason favorite next year. You're going to be looking at Oklahoma for a long time, because there's no reason to think that Oklahoma is going to fall off the map. So you're going to have to try to invent ways to beat Oklahoma, because, Tommy, it looks like you're going to be running into the Sooners for a while, especially if, like I think we all believe on this show, with the young talent that Wichita State has on this team, will have to replace people. But you look at all those award winners, look at how many of them are not seniors. Look at how many bats they have in the lineup and pitchers they have in the bullpen that are not going to be graduating for Wichita State. Shockers could be set up for a run of some dominance here in the AAC, but unfortunately that means that they may be matching up with Oklahoma in the postseason a lot, and that's a tough task.
Well, let me address the comments about, playing Oklahoma and the draw and, sort of what that looks like for Wichita State. And then we'll talk about the specific game plan and kind of, you mentioned the identity of this Shocker softball squad and, that sort of thing. So first off, as far as the draw is concerned, this is an article, I believe, that was in the Wichita Eagle, and Coach Bredbender was kind of talking a little bit about the Shocker draw. There's obviously nothing that you can do now about that, or there's really nothing you could have done before either, but it's the way that it worked out for Wichita State. But, the Shockers had an RPI of 24. They were ranked 24th in the country. They won both the regular season and conference tournament in the American. They were frustrated that Mississippi State, who has an RPI of 29, they're the number 2 seed in the Stillwater Regional. And I think that was the regional that the Shockers wanted to be in. You've got Mississippi State, Boston, and Campbell. Those are the 3 other teams that are in the Stillwater Regional. More than likely, those 3 teams are all flying to Stillwater, but yet you've got Wichita State with a higher RPI, nonetheless, driving to Norman to play the overall top seed in the regionals. And so obviously there's some frustration there. But you're right. This Sooner program is dominant. They've been dominant for a while. They're not going anywhere. The same way that you would like to think that Wichita State isn't going anywhere either. They're not quite at the level of Oklahoma, but let's be honest. More than likely, what's going to have to happen for this Shocker softball squad, they're going to have to beat OU at least once, maybe even twice, to
Probably
advance
twice.
out of the regional. But they could. There is a way where they could advance by only beating the Sooners once. Obviously, the Sooners are going to have to lose to either Texas A&M or I think Morgan State is the other team in that regional. That's probably not going to happen. So more than likely, the Shockers are going to have to beat OU twice, if not, hopefully just one time. But that's the way it's going to be. And I just don't, like you mentioned, due to the proximity, due to the way that things sort of look geographically, I don't think this is going to be the final time that the Shockers are going to be able to see OU. One positive is the fact that this team faced OU before. Now, as you mentioned just a couple of moments ago, that was not a good outing for Wichita State. The Sooners run-ruled the Shockers. But at least they've seen them before. At least they're a little bit familiar with them. And they're familiar with that program only being a couple of hours away from Norman. So you'd like to think that, this team will be, prepared, that they'll have a good game plan ready to go. But to answer your initial question, Blake, about the long ball for the Shockers, and, is there an over-reliance, and should they look at maybe trying to find another way to beat the Sooners? The Shockers' identity is set. They are who they are. Yeah. They've won the way that they've won all season long. They won a regular season conference crown, and they won a tournament conference crown. Now is not the time, this late in the season, to start tinkering with the way that you do things. It's not the time to start tinkering with the process. You don't want to tell your home run hitters
to go and hit doubles? You don't want to do
that? No, you probably don't. And is that going to work against a team like the Sooners? It certainly didn't work a couple of weeks ago, but we're not at a point now where you got to throw out the rule book and start from scratch. This is a very talented Shocker team, right? They've gotten the way that they've played softball all season long has gotten them to this point. I think Coach Bredbender, I think the staff, they need to ride the success, ride the wave of the way that this team has won all season long. And so that's kind of the long and short of my thoughts of it. Yeah, and Weston, that maybe there is a scenario where the Shockers, I don't want to say they play small ball, but obviously they're going to need to win by any means necessary without tweaking the actual process. There's a lot of ways to win softball games. So obviously there is a path there for Wichita State.
Yeah, I don't even think, and I hate to use this word, I really, really do, because it makes Wichita State not sound like the fantastic softball team that they are. But I kind of think of the way you upset a good softball team. I kind of liken it to the 3-ball in March Madness. You take that 3-ball, and a team gets hot, they can really knock anybody out of the tournament, right?
Well, I think of home run could be an equalizer.
Exactly, and I think with softball, that home run is kind of that same concept. Where look, Oklahoma can play fantastic softball, for 6 innings, and then one bad pitch, and Wichita State puts 3 on the board. Or 4 or 2 or, whatever the case may be with just one mistake. And that's kind of the advantage you have, when you do hit the long ball. Now, I think it's kind of like the 3. I think you live by the 3, you die by the 3, you live by the long ball, you die by the long ball. So that just kind of is what it is. But I do think it is a good recipe to upset potentially the best team in all of softball. And again, I feel weird about using that word upset because it's maybe insinuating that Wichita State is not, a very good softball team, and they are, but I kind of think of it like Alabama football, it doesn't matter who you're talking about. You kind of use that word upset no matter how good the team is, because, when Alabama was doing their thing, or still are, it's kind of that same concept. So, I really don't think that they need to change what they're going to do, because I do think it is a good recipe. It didn't last time, but that was the die by the long ball. You just hope, and certainly you're pulling together every facet of the game, so that doesn't mean you're trying to not hit singles or move runners around or anything like that. Of course not. But maybe this time you hope you live by the long ball. So, I think that is what it is. And, before I guess I move on to, I wanted to talk a little bit about the first opponent, Texas A&M. It was in Morgan State is the other one. Isn't that right? That's what I heard you say.
Yes,
which
I
think
correct.
they're. So Texas A&M, while we're glossing past them, and they are 39. I think they were 39-21. Is that right? 31-21. Sorry, but if you look at their record, they have not played very quality softball against anybody ranked. They lost to number 19 Tennessee. They lost 2 of 3 to number 12 LSU.
But Weston, one thing you have to consider though, they play in the best conference. We have people on here who will say, "Oh, well, SEC is the best in football or whatever," and other conferences in softball. There's no argument. The SEC is by far the best conference. Most teams in the top 25, highest seeds, most teams in the RPI. It's the SEC.
Well, hey, I'll jump in here very briefly. Sure. One thing that I look at with this Texas A&M squad, I get where you're coming from, Weston, kind of about what their resume is on paper this season. And I know, Blake, you mentioned about the conference that they're in. I look at it from an overall body of work over the last couple of decades. Texas A&M they've made 19 straight NCAA tournaments. So there is a level of consistency there with this program. Are they the one of the top teams in the country? I mean, they're maybe in that second tier, right? This year specifically, but they do play in an incredibly tough conference. But I also look at the fact that they're no strangers to this tournament process at all. And so they're going to be a formidable opponent for Wichita State. Do I think that the Shockers will probably be favored against the Aggies? Probably, although the other thing to keep in mind, and these two teams haven't played each other in quite a while, but from the research I did, Wichita State has never beaten Texas A&M in softball. I think their overall all-time record is like 0-9. Now, obviously, that means nothing for this season. This is a special Shocker team, but at the same time, it's going to be an interesting matchup, and I think that it would be wise, and I guarantee you that Coach Bredbender and the Shockers are doing this. They're not overlooking the Aggies. They're not saying, well, we only need to focus on Oklahoma. There's a reason why it's a 64 team tournament and, pretty close to men's basketball or women's basketball, right? If you make the tournament, you deserve to be there more often than not. You're a solid program. So you absolutely cannot look past the number 3 Texas A&M Aggies, that seed, and the number 4 Morgan State program as well. You can't just focus on Oklahoma. And so I do think that's going to be a pretty big matchup.
And the other point that I'll make too before we move on to our next topic is, it is a double elimination tournament, but a softball game and a baseball game, even worse than softball because you've got 6 fewer outs. You only play 7 innings.
Yeah.
You give up 1 bad inning, it can get away from you really fast. And I think for Wichita State, they're going to have to get a great, maybe even the best start that they've ever got from Bailey Lang this season to have a chance. She didn't have a great start, and Shockers kind of threw somebody else in there, a reserve,
so
not their
Blake,
second best pitcher, and she got torched a little bit.
Here's my question, and maybe this is something that you've thought about a little bit. The first game in this regional is against Texas A&M. So do you throw Bailey Lang out there against A&M, or do you save her potentially for Oklahoma, which more than likely is going to be the next game that the Shockers would have? Do you have to try to get a win first so you're not on the brink of elimination, or do you save your star pitcher for the biggest matchup that you could possibly have?
God, when did that happen in baseball? Like it was in some postseason series. It was a big series too, and maybe it was the Tigers or somebody, and they didn't throw somebody because they were saving him for game 7, and well, guess what? They didn't get to game 7. You didn't even throw your best guy. The thing is, in softball, the arm tax is so different. Bailey Lang has actually pitched on back-to-back days multiple times this year, and she's been good. I mean, she went back-to-back complete games against South Florida, went back-to-back with pretty decent starts against Tulsa and Central Florida. Hasn't had her best stuff here over the last 4 games. So I'm going to leave that in the hands of Christy Bredbender. Boy, it sure is a lot better to start 1-0. If you trust Caitlin Bingham to come out and get you a win against Texas A&M, and you trust your bats, then maybe you do go ahead and start Caitlin Bingham in that game. Bingham, for the most part this year, she's 9-3. She actually has the lowest ERA on the team, but you look at the innings. Lang has thrown 167 innings, and Bingham's only thrown about 90, so way less in innings. But she has started 14 games this year, made 22 appearances. So if you trust Caitlin Bingham, if you can steal that first game and, rely on your home run hitting, because, for one thing, we didn't really talk about this, there's so much depth in terms of the home run hitting for Wichita State. Like Lauren Mills doesn't even play all the games, and she's got an OPS of like 1,200 and hit a grand slam in the semifinals of the AAC championship. I think you can generate enough offense to go ahead and beat Texas A&M. But at the end of the day, Tommy, I think you've got to look at going 1-0 is the most important thing. You have got to start 1-0 in the tournament. And if whatever you have to do that, I think that's what you do. So the tournament begins for Wichita State on May 21st, Friday, 5 o'clock at Norman, Oklahoma, and you can watch that game on ESPN2. So check that out on the Deuce. Moving on to our next topic here, and we're going to get back to the round ball sports in just a moment, to the diamond sports. In fact, it's a whole diamond sports show, so if you like that sort of thing, you're in the right place.
Second week in a row.
Is it? Yeah, I guess it is. I mean, it's that time of year. I mean, what else are we going to talk about? And
true.
Tommy, this topic I really crafted for you. I want to get Weston's thoughts on just kind of the team in general, but the Wind Surge with opening night. They open up Riverfront Stadium. I'm not sure if you were there for opening night, but I do know you were there during opening weekend because ad tweets from Tommy, you tweeted it out to social media. Wichita is currently 8-4. They are leading the North Division. They have the best record in the AA Central. Wind Surge are 3-3 at Riverfront Stadium, 5-1 on the road. But as we talked about with the Royals all April, way too early to pass judgment on this team. But I do want to get Weston's thoughts on the team and the opening 2 weeks of Wind Surge baseball. But Tommy, this is a special question for you. Because you were there, Weston and I were not there. I want your thoughts on the game day experience. I don't care about the team. I don't care if they lost when you were there. I didn't even check to look. What were your thoughts on being in the stadium? What did you like about the stadium? What did you like about the fan interaction, the public address announcer, the scoreboard, all of the fan enhancements to the stadium? What was your thought on the game day experience and affiliated baseball being back in Wichita?
Well, first off, I feel very special that you crafted a question specifically
just
for me.
For you.
However, it's something that I know Weston can answer to because he went to a game as well on opening weekend. So
wow.
He'll be able to.
Didn't even know.
Yeah, so he'll
Weston,
be able to chime in after me.
Yeah, please answer.
Yeah. So first things first. I had so much fun, and I think a lot of it. I was talking with my wife about this. I think a lot of it was the fact that I've waited 15 months for it. Like, it was the anticipation, from when the games were, not really when the games were supposed to start last year, but when I got my tickets for last year was really when the excitement started. Then obviously,
hey, Tommy, before you finish, Are you I know that you're a KU fan. You go to KU football, basketball games. Are you primarily a baseball guy? Like, in terms of going to a live game, do you consider yourself to be a baseball guy first?
I would rather go and watch baseball live than any other sport. I would rather go to a baseball game other than over a football game, over a basketball game, over a golf tournament, over anything else. Above all else, and it was, not to get all into it, but my dad was a big baseball fan growing up. We went to a lot of Wranglers games when I was a kid. I played Little League baseball. I loved baseball. Wasn't very good at it, but I enjoyed watching it. And so, so that was big for me, and just that anticipation. And I'll tell you what, Blake, the thing that was the most surreal to me, and maybe this is something that Weston can speak to a little bit, is the not just the game day experience, which I can talk about too, but sitting in that stadium, looking out and seeing the same view that I've seen my entire life, but it was a completely different stadium. And it was so surreal, I think is the best word to use. It was so much fun. The game was a lot of fun. The game day experience, everybody was pleasant. Everybody was excited. Everybody was happy. Just the facilities are top notch, state of the art. I mean, even as far down to sitting in the stands, and the amount of leg room you have is incredible. I mean, it's like just little things like that. The team store is fully stocked. I mean, they've got so much merchandise that I didn't like. If you go and look online, you see maybe a few options for different things, but when you actually go to the store, they've got so many different options for merch. I had a blast. I thought it was a lot of fun. It was great to watch live baseball in Wichita that mattered again in a state-of-the-art facility. And so that was my takeaway from it. Maybe Weston has some different thoughts.
Well, it's not all good news. I'm not talking about on the field stuff for Wichita. General Manager Jared Forma has left the team. He left the Wind Surge just after their debut game in Wichita. And you'll recall, if you're a hardcore Wind Surge fan, that this is the second really big departure of an executive in about the last 8 months or so. Team president Jay Miller resigned in December. So, Tommy, everybody has had positive things to say about Wichita. A lot of people seem to want to be a part of Wind Surge baseball, but you've got these two really important, really high-level executives leaving the program. Do you have concerns that we've had so much turnover in the front office for the Wind Surge in its maiden season?
No, I'm not concerned at all. And here's the reason. You've got guys like Jared Forma who were with, you have to remember, he was with the team when they were the New Orleans Baby Cakes.
Sure.
When they were affiliated with the Miami Marlins. So he was familiar with the front office with the Miami Marlins. He was familiar with the scouting department with the Miami Marlins. He was familiar with the inner workings and the processes and the whole way that the farm system works for this Miami Marlins, major league team. Obviously, when affiliations changed and they became a Twins affiliate, then all of a sudden, all of the people that he works for basically change, right? You're dealing with a different franchise. You're dealing with, different scouts and different front office executives and things like that. And so I just think that and my understanding, and I don't know, I haven't confirmed this, but just the speculations that I've heard from different people that are fairly close to knowing about what's going on with Wichita Wind Surge baseball is that this was something that was anticipated, that it was something that was planned. It was something that, the plan was, Jared Forma, you were here since day one, as far as this team coming from New Orleans to Wichita. The goal is to get you all the way, to opening day. And then from there, we'll go ahead and get a change done. So that, that's basically my understanding of the situation, was that it was, let's get the Wind Surge to opening day in Wichita, and then we'll make that transition. So I'm not super concerned. I wonder though, what does this mean for the Wind Surge moving forward? And so I'd like to see some continuity. I don't know what the Twins have in mind as far as, bringing on another GM or what that quite looks like for the franchise. But I'd like to see some continuity moving forward.
And that is a good point too, Tommy, because, the obviously at the end of the day, the Wind Surge have to serve a lot of people, don't they? They have to serve people in Wichita. Obviously, they're serving this city. I don't know if they serve Wichita first and foremost, but they have to serve the Twins too. They're the Twins affiliate. Their number one job is, I don't even know if it's to make money, but their job is to make the Twins better. That's what they're supposed to do. So Minnesota may have different ideas about guys that they want in, the guys that, the Marlins may have a different vision for their farm system than the Twins do. Probably
they may, the Twins, the Twins may have wanted somebody entirely different to be the general manager. Maybe they've got somebody with one of their other farm teams that they wanted to come in and
promote.
So it could have been, and I don't know, it could have been Jared Forma saying, "Hey, I want to transition out." Maybe there's a situation where he was well liked in the Marlins organization and he's going back to join the Marlins organization. So I don't know if he left on his own volition, if it was a mutual thing, if the Twins wanted to make a move. But at the end of the day, I don't think, and this is the problem, is that we live in a clickbait society. We live in a knee-jerk social media world, and all of a sudden it's opening week, the home, much anticipated, much ballyhooed debut of this franchise, and a couple of days later the general manager resigns. And so you're like, oh my God, the sky is falling. What's happening? There could be a lot of scenarios that explain the departure that make it a lot less controversial than I think what people are thinking. And, you read any comment section of any news organization, which I try not to. But like I read the Wichita Eagle, the comment section on that particular story. And, people are like, this is just a dumpster fire waiting to happen and the franchise is falling apart. I'm like, no, they're not. They're pretty stable. The operations are pretty stable and the play on the field is pretty solid too. I mean, the fact that they opened up the franchise, the first 6 games on the road and took 5 of 6 to start the season is pretty special. The fact that you've got players on this Wind Surge roster, and I don't know if this is something you want to talk about at all, if we were just mainly talking about the experience in the front office, but you've got bona fide players on this team that are major leaguers, that are guys that will make an impact with, I guess, the Minnesota Twins. If they stay with the organization, they can always go elsewhere, but they will make an impact. I'd look at guys like Jose Miranda, who's already hit 4 home runs in the first 12 games. Aaron Whitefield was named the Double-A Central Player or Hitter of the Week, I think it was last week, for his first week efforts at the plate. You've got guys that will be able to make a contribution with this franchise for years to come. So there's no issue with this franchise at all. I just think that with a new big league squad, you've got to try to find a way.
So, Weston, real quick for you, you have any thoughts on the Tommy just shared his thoughts. Jared Forma, general manager, leaving the team after the debut game in Wichita. Team president resigned in December. Any thoughts for you on the turnover in the front office for the Wind Surge? Tommy says basically the verdict is for Tommy, no deal. For you, is it a big deal, little deal, or no deal turnover in the Wind Surge front office?
Yeah, I feel pretty same as Tommy. It's just not a big deal. I mean, especially now that you have and not to echo too much of what Tommy said, but now that you have this, the affiliation with the Twins and they're running things, top to bottom, as opposed to before, there was a little bit more, I think, importance on that local level. Now with this strong affiliation, and this is good, right? Because normally you sure wouldn't want the Wind Surge to have missed a season because of COVID, finally get to play baseball, turnover with the GM, and just kind of be on their own with that, right? But now that's why this structure, this affiliation with the MLB across the board, I think was so important. It provides that stability, because at this level, that kind of thing is going to happen. When you're in minor league sports, you have all sorts of folks that are in that front office, whether it's business, player development, whatever, that are trying to move on, right? I don't think anybody's career goal is to be a minor league GM, right? That's not the end goal. Maybe they settle in and they end up happy, but that's not the goal when they set out. So you're going to have turnover at a high level. But because there's a strong affiliation with the Twins, with the MLB as a whole, no worries at all.
And maybe he was close to Lou Schweckheimer. That was a really devastating and unplanned loss for the Wind Surge. It would be really tough to show up to work every day. And like Tommy said, it sounded like it was planned. So not trying to make a story out of that, but it's something that we definitely have to talk about. The Wind Surge at Tulsa, 6-game series starting on Tuesday. That would be today as you are watching or listening to the podcast. 7:05 first pitch. You can catch them back in Wichita on Tuesday the 25th. Through the 30th against the Springfield Cardinals. We now head to our final topic of the show. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, the Royals have fallen off the face of the planet. An 11-game losing streak mercifully snapped against the White Sox in Chicago, game 1 of a doubleheader on Friday the 14th. It was a makeup of a game that got rained out in April. Royals have lost 4 of their last 5 series. The other one was a split against Chicago's, all in the division, and they were swept by the Tigers. The Tigers swept the Royals. I will say, Royals, it looked like they should have had a chance to win that White Sox series. To me, I watched the replay. I mean, it looks like he's out. I don't know how you look at that replay and say that he's safe, but somehow Major League Baseball found a not conclusive to overturn the call on the field. Whatever. It's not the worst non-review I've ever seen, but I mean, it looks to me like he's out. So bad call into that series. Royals should have had a chance, in my estimation, to win that in extra innings. But Tommy, start with you. Royals run differential is -30. They're 2-8 over their last 10. We've asked several times, do the Royals suck? Literally all of the trends that you can look at. There are some individual players that are playing well. But all of the team trends for Kansas City are not just bad, they're real bad right now.
Yeah, you've got a couple of bright spots you can look at with this team. Salvador Perez is one of them. We talked before the season started when Salvi signed that, extension for quite a bit of money from Kansas City about how, was that a good move for the Royals, or would it have been better, to try to figure out something else that wasn't going to be, as cost prohibitive potentially for the Royals? But he's earning every dollar of that contract right now. He is one of the few bright spots for this Royals squad over the last couple of weeks or so, which is surprising considering he's coming off of Tommy John surgery. And really, if you watch him, he hasn't changed his game at all. You know, one of the big criticisms from a guy like Salvi over the years has been he strikes out a lot, you know, and he swings at a lot of different pitches that are outside of the zone. He's doing that this year, but he's making a lot better contact than he has in years past. You know, look at that, the home run that he hit the other night against the White Sox. It was, you know, with one of the bright spots of the last 2 weeks for Kansas City when they got that win against Chicago. Hit that opposite field home run that, you know, I don't know if you guys saw, you know what I'm talking about, but you see that replay. The ball was about in the catcher's glove. I think Carlos Rodon was pitching for Chicago. And I mean, Salvi couldn't have swung any later than he did. And he crushed it to the opposite field for a home run. So there are some bright spots offensively for Kansas City, but they absolutely do not outshine the glaring issues that the Royals have right now, especially offensively. You look at guys like Jorge Soler and Hunter Dozier, who are mightily struggling. They are having such a hard time this season. I think both of them are pressing a little bit. We talked about that last week on the program. You know, I think you have to look at, you know, Carlos Santana as someone that is continuing to produce, you know, at a decent level for Kansas City right now. He's been solid. I would shudder to think on what this Royals offense would look like without Carlos Santana and Salvador Perez right now. You know, but other than those two guys, there's just really not a whole lot offensively to write home about. Then you add on, of course, the pitching for Kansas City. And we all talked about how great of a start of the season Danny Duffy had. Well, Duffy's headed to the IL. And so that's an issue for sure. When you've got who's been the guy who's been your best pitcher all season long. He did, you know, he has had a couple of rough outings as of late, but overall, the most consistent pitcher that you have on staff going to the IL, that's not good for Kansas City. So I struggle to find a lot of bright spots right now for this team. The sad thing about it is you look at how great of a start they had and you start to think that was just, it was fool's gold. It was a mirage in the desert. And unfortunately, I think what we're seeing right now, the longer that it goes on for Kansas City, may end up being who this team really is, unfortunately.
Weston, this was your take before the year. You said Royals are going to contend. They're going to win 80 or so games. They're going to be in it. Are you worried?
Well, of course I'm worried. I mean, you'd be a fool to not say you're worried, right? But with that being said, I will stick to that take. Look, of course, everything you said is, Tommy said, Blake, you mentioned it too, you know, is accurate. Look, they're struggling. They're not playing good baseball. I've said this before, but the nice thing about the game of baseball and really the way the MLB sees it is so early. The season is so long. If things can get corrected. Now, the problem is we're not seeing signs of how that's going to get corrected, right? But if they can get it corrected, there's plenty of time. That won't be an issue. There'll be plenty of time to get it corrected, get things going in the right directions. Keep saying, and it looks like now we're getting close to the reality of Mondi coming back. You know, we've seen hot and cold out of him, so hopefully you get the hot coming back, potentially a spark to that offense, immediately steps into the 2 or 3 hole. I mean, whether he should or shouldn't is another debate, but that's where he will come in at. Don't think that won't happen for sure. And then we're starting to see positive signs out of Bobby Witt down in, and that's not that he's any type of savior, but I only say these things to just point out, you know, it really does only take 2 or 3 guys to really kind of get things going in a different direction, not necessarily to completely, you know, revamp an entire team. Can't be done by 2 or 3 guys, but 2 or 3 guys can change the direction of the way things are heading. I think the thing that concerns me the most, and it was what concerned us coming into the year, is the pitching, right? There really doesn't look like there's a whole lot of signs of hope. And the thing that would be even worse for the future is it seems like not only are there not bright spots, but we're now forcing some young guys to pitch maybe when they're not ready. And that's the last thing you want to do is throw in these young pitchers and really hurt their growth by just shattering their confidence and having them getting knocked around at the big league level. So that is concerning to me. But, you know, I will stand by this. The talent is there. That doesn't mean it's there. It's ready for this year, but the talent is there.
Danny Duffy,
I want to say,
think, Tommy. Oh, so Tommy, I'll go back to you. But Danny Duffy, it looked like he was covering up the deficiencies by the way he was pitching out of his mind to start the year. Keller has been much better, but much better means he's given up 7 earned runs over 15 and a third innings of his last starts, which is not great. Stelmont and Barlow have pulled it together over the last 3, but you talk about a young pitcher shattering his confidence. This Daniel Lynch move looks like one of the stupidest things I've ever seen, because he pitched 2 2/3 innings at Detroit, gave up 7 hits, 3 earned runs. He has put the bullpen in a bad spot in literally every start he's made. And Jacob Junis has not been good out of the pen. Since May, whip of over 1.25 in every appearance. Never happened in April. 1 scoreless appearance, and he I will say he did have some relief appearances to start the season before he got moved to the starting rotation. Just for full clarification, so he did have success there early on. 1 scoreless appearance in May, not counting his start against Chicago because it was 2 days after his last appearance. He was the opener for that game. Opponents hitting .400 against him in May. His ERA this month is 13.5. It was 3.5 in April. So what am I missing here with Daniel Lynch somehow being the savior and we need Junis in the bullpen? Opponents are hitting the ball on the ground a lot more against him. His ground ball outs versus fly ball outs, 3.67 in May. It was 0.9 in April. His whip is over a run in May. Short homestand begins tomorrow against the Brewers, Tommy. I think that this Daniel Lynch experiment needs to be terminated in a hurry. It's not working. Junis was pitching much better in a different role. It's time to move in a different direction. I understand it's only 3 starts, but one of those starts, he showed flashes of brilliance. The other start was a complete train wreck. And quite frankly, the start against Detroit doesn't really give me a whole lot of confidence to throw him out there for his 4th appearance that it's going to go a whole lot better. Because Detroit's a bad team. They were hitting terrible, and somehow they lit him up.
Well, listen, they've already made the change. I mean, Daniel Lynch was demoted a couple of days ago. So, they sent him down to AAA. It sounds like to what Weston was saying before, I absolutely agree. That they threw Daniel Lynch out there before he was ready, and he got a rude awakening on how to pitch to big league batters. That's just the bottom line. And it sounds like, and this is according to Sam Mellinger from the Kansas City Star, he tweeted this out at one of Mike Matheny's press conferences after they sent Daniel Lynch back down to AAA. He said that Matheny didn't come out and say it directly, but it sounds like part of what they want Daniel Lynch to work on in AAA in Omaha is pitch tipping. That was something that we talked about last week on the program about how that could have been, some of the major issues that we saw with Daniel Lynch. It's going to be interesting to see how this rotation moves forward with Danny Duffy on the IL, with the Daniel Lynch early season experiment not working out. Brad Keller is still a question mark. What is he going to look like moving forward as we get into the month of June and beyond? Guys, I watched the game the other night. I think it was on Saturday evening, the Royals White Sox game. And Mike Minor started that game, and he pitched a really good ball game for Kansas City. It was one of the bright pitching spots that we've seen over the last couple of weeks for Kansas City.
Do you think he could sustain that?
I don't know. I mean, he hasn't in his career up to this point. He's going to get a
chance to, right?
He's going to get a chance to, and the Royals are going to need to lean on him. It sounds like Chris Bubich is going to be rejoining the rotation. Sounds like he'll be starting the game on Tuesday. That's according to reports for Kansas City. So we'll see what he looks like. Obviously, Jacob Junis moving back into the rotation as well. So there are options. It's not like the Royals are without starters. The question is, are they going to be effective starters? That's the question mark. And the only other thing I want to point out, if we're going to give Weston a hard time about his prediction before the season started about the Royals contending, I feel like I need to at least buzz myself and say that my bold prediction was that Bobby Witt would be the American League Rookie of the Year. That was maybe a little bit overblown on my part. He's currently hitting 178 with 1 home run and 14 strikeouts in 51 plate appearances appearances in Double-A right now for the Northwest Arkansas Naturals. So I'm not sure he's going to end up being the guy this season for Kansas City. So I feel like I got to call myself on that one.
Hey, you know what? And more power to you for having the honesty to do it, Tommy.
Hey, I'm nothing if I'm not honest.
And I like to always point out when I do give Blake credit, because it's not often, but Blake was, I think, the most vocal about not liking the Daniel Lynch move, and I have to admit that it has been a disaster from start to finish.
But the other thing... The other thing, just really quick, the other thing about it is that at the time, it didn't seem like a terrible idea because the Royals had a lot of cushion in the division race. That cushion is gone now, and a lot of that has to do, unfortunately, with Daniel Lynch.
Yeah, and I think the other thing, too, my position at that time was I didn't feel like they had a whole lot of options because I wasn't sure. And, I mean, just maybe bringing Daniel Lynch up to the big leagues was the mistake at all because I didn't feel like you could bring Daniel Lynch up into the bullpen. But that's my concern, and maybe this is... hopefully Matheny and Dayton Moore have seen this play out and it didn't play out well. But my fear, though, is that, injuries, lack of production, force Jackson Kowar or Asa Lacy, or any of these other young guys. Now Bubic he's already pitched at the big league level, so it's not quite the same bringing him up. I mean, he's been there, he's done it at a decent level. He wasn't, not quite ready, but he's been around, so it's not the same. But like Jackson Kowar and Asa Lacy, those are the two in mind that I hope we don't have to force them into action like we did Daniel Lynch.
Well, Royals are going to try to win their first series they have won in a couple of weeks, believe it or not. The last time, guys, that the Royals won a series, I think it was when they no, it wasn't the Twins. It was back when they swept the Tigers 23rd through the 26th. They have not won a series since. Going to try to get that done with a quick 2-game set. It's a quick 5-game homestand. It begins tomorrow as you're listening to us today or watching against the Brewers 18th and 19th. 3-game set. I guess that would be today as you're watching us, beg your pardon. 18th and 19th, 3-game set against the Tigers again on Friday. And boy, if you get swept by the Tigers 2 series in a row, we're going to have some really big problems. Tommy, it's that time of the show to hit the music. It is the Wichita Whiparound, the best stories from in and around the Air Capital that we just didn't have time for on the show today, but we think you need to know about. Tommy and Weston, in that order, give us your Wichita Whiparound story for this week.
Yeah, so it's kind of, we're definitely in a different time of year. It's obviously baseball season right now, but we know we're in a different time of year because Wichita State basketball is actually in the Wichita Whiparound and not an actual story today. And it's not really specifically about the Shocker program. It is about TBT this summer, the basketball tournament, and the Aftershocks team made up of Shocker alumni. The news came out just a couple of days ago that Wichita State basketball legend Ron Baker will serve as the team's general manager, the alumni team, the Aftershocks, for the basketball tournament. Of course, we all know Ron Baker. We all know the legend of Ron Baker during his time at Wichita State. His assistants will be former players Zach Bush and J.R. Simon. It will be a 16-person team to compete in the Wichita Regional at Koch Arena. Some of the names that are already committed to play in this tournament for the Aftershocks include Marcus McDuffie, Connor Frankamp, Richard Kelly, and Darrell Willis. They'll be returning to the Roundhouse to play for the Aftershocks. But pretty excited to see Ron Baker, albeit in the role of general manager, for this Aftershocks team, but it should be a lot of fun to see him back in Charles Koch Arena.
Well, I'm going to move over and steal Blake's sport of choice, and we're going to talk high school boys tennis.
Hey, atta baby.
As Wichita Collegiate won its 25th title in program history and 4th in the last 5 state tournaments, which is absolutely incredible. And I think there have been several times on this podcast, I know maybe it was with girls swimming, maybe we've talked softball, I think we've mentioned top dynasties really in Wichita or Kansas athletic sports. You absolutely have to consider Wichita Collegiate men's tennis as one of the top dynasties of all time when you have 25 state championships and have won 4 of the last 5. Not only they also had they won doubles as Collegiate senior Luke Swan and Charlie Dunn outlasted a couple of brothers from Kansas City Christian, which to me, I know I'm up here and maybe this sounds snobby of me, but Owen and James Vander Ark just sound like a doubles team from Kansas City Christian. So the Wichita Collegiate boys of Luke Swan and Charlie Dunn took them down, and Collegiate goes on to win, like I said, their 25th title in program history.
Very, very impressive. I'm going to go back to Wichita State track and field, actually. The Shocker men finished second at the American Athletic Conference Championships. They were held this past weekend. They were actually in first through the first couple of days, but could not quite polish it off. They led after day one. Houston won their 5th title in a row to come from behind and beat the Shocker. Shocker women finished 4th. Rebecca Topham took home 4th career American Athletic Conference MVP award. She was 4th in the 1500, 2nd in the 5000, and she won the 3000 steeplechase by 9 seconds, which in those distance sports, that's basically an eternity. So she basically crushed the field. Davis Dubbert was actually the male MVP. Winning the high jump, he finished all conference in the javelin. He was 4th in the decathlon. So all in all, I know the women wanted to finish a little better, but Shocker men 2nd at the AAC championships. A good weekend overall for Wichita State University track and field. And that is our show. Before we say goodbye, fellas, do we have any additions, corrections, or retractions?
I do have an addition. This is something that the news broke on this about an hour before we began recording this program on Monday night, the 17th. And it's big news in the world of the transfer portal as it relates to college basketball and the Kansas Jayhawks. Arizona State transfer Remy Martin has decided to play for Bill Self and the Kansas Jayhawks. He entered the transfer pool last week. He committed to the Jayhawks. He still plans to go through the NBA draft process and see how it all plays out. But he has confirmed that news to several sports writers, and then also the university did confirm it as well. He was a 2-time first-team All-Pac-12 selection. He averaged 19.1 points per game during each of the last 2 seasons. He led the Pac-12 in scoring while shooting over 43% from the field and averaging just under 4 assists and almost 3 rebounds last season. And guys, I don't know if you remember Remy Martin, but there was a 2-game, there was a home and home set that the Jayhawks played against the Sun Devils in 2017 and 2018. The game in Lawrence at Allen Fieldhouse, I believe Martin was a freshman that year. He scored 21 points off the bench for Arizona State inside Allen Fieldhouse, and then scored double digits the next time they played. And of course, I'm sure we can all remember that Arizona State won both of those matchups against the Jayhawks, including the one inside Allen Fieldhouse. This is a big get for the Jayhawks. It's a big get for Bill Self. They needed a point guard. They needed a point guard that can handle the ball, that can shoot, and that can also score at the rim. And, I don't know about you guys. And I know, Blake, you don't particularly follow the transfer portal and recruiting and commits and that sort of thing. But, I know Weston, you do. There were some big time guys at the point guard position that KU was going after. They were whiffing on all of them. Ty Washington committed to Kentucky. Severe Wheeler from Georgia. He committed today to play for John Calipari in Kentucky. There have been a couple of other point guards that Bill Self wanted, but it looks like Remy Martin, according to, people that are pretty well respected in the college basketball world, they had Remy Martin as the number 1 transfer in the portal. He's going to be playing for KU at least for his final season.
Yeah, it's kind of incredible too, because it's not something I had even really had on my radar or did not know that, Kansas was a possibility. Yeah. And it's interesting too, because my understanding, and maybe I'm wrong about this, I thought Joseph Yusufu plays the 1, and not to suggest that he can't play 2. And we know from years past, Bill likes kind of almost a 2-point guard system. So maybe that's kind of what he's thinking. But boy, is this team going to look entirely different than what we saw last year. They've brought a lot of guys in. There's going to be a lot of change. And I don't think you're going to see any of the young guys play hardly at all.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how they blend, and depending on who comes back, who doesn't come back for Kansas.
True.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing, Tommy. I'm a lot more inclined to be excited about this because we've actually seen this guy play. He's actually played minutes in a college uniform. at the Big 12 level, at the Power 5, Power 6 conference level. So you can, I think, extrapolate a lot better from this guy. Not that it always works out that way, Quentin Grimes, but you can extrapolate, I think, a lot better, a lot more accurately than maybe a high school recruit. Weston, any other ACs or Rs for you?
Yeah, just a small note. I don't know if you guys saw this, but so Chiefs tickets went on sale. The NFL has announced they are full capacity selling. Yep. Obviously, if a state, or local county has a different ordinance, then so be it. But the expectation is that they are selling tickets at full capacity, which is fantastic. I get chills even thinking about Arrowhead full next year. It's going to be fantastic. But here's the fun catch. If you want to even step foot in Arrowhead Stadium next year, the cheapest option you have, at least according to StubHub, and I would assume the Chiefs may very well have already sold out, according to on the secondary market, $225 to even get in the door at Arrowhead next year. I think people are excited to be back in a full, jam-packed, screaming loud, barbecue-smelling Arrowhead Stadium. Excuse me, Gia Field at Arrowhead Stadium.
Hey, Blake, I do have one more addition that I feel like we should probably throw in. I don't know if you guys saw this or not, but over the weekend, the Wichita Thunder became the first team in the ECHL to clinch a playoff berth. They're currently in first place in the West. They have a winning percentage of about 66% and 84 points. The game on Sunday against Rapid City was canceled. The Thunder has a higher points percentage than Rapid City does, so the Thunder earned their second ever berth in the Kelly Cup playoffs and the first since the 2017-2018 season.
I certainly hope that letting all these people in, and I'm in favor of it. I mean, the trends are going in the right direction with the coronavirus. Alabama said months ago, we're letting everybody in.
Yeah.
And, the programs like that, they need the money. I mean, even though they print money at Alabama, they still need the money. So it's not surprising. But I'm excited because the more NFL teams, as long as people do this right, and if you haven't got the shot yet at this point, that's your fault because it's available. You can go get it. In Wichita, go and get it. There's not lines. But the more, and I talked with Joanna Pryor about this on the Jetcast, the more that opens up at the NFL, the NBA, the NHL, and Division I sports, that's going to trickle down to Division II sports. So that could make things look a lot better, a lot different for the Jets next year, for Wichita State, for high schools. So hopefully, people keep getting vaccinated, keep being safe, and, we're finally going to crack this thing and actually get back to normal. That would be fantastic. I certainly hope that we're seeing fans at Fugate Gymnasium next year. That is our show for this week. I don't know if we're going to talk a lot of Diamond Sports next week. We've been on a Diamond Sports kick, though, and so we might. You never know. You'll have to make sure that you like and subscribe, and make sure you hit the notification so that when we come out with our show next week, you'll be notified. And while you're there, why don't you share it with a friend? Whatever platform you're on, YouTube or Facebook or one of those other platforms, Spotify, there's a share function. Why don't you send this to a friend and let them know if you hate us, if you like us, or maybe you love us. Maybe you're in love with Weston modeling Wichita Wind Surge apparel. Whatever your reason is, we don't really care as long as you like and subscribe. And you can follow us on social media if you want. Once again, we're at KOGpod on Twitter. And for our beloved audio listeners, Tommy and Weston, please share your Twitter handles.
You can follow me anytime on Twitter at Tweets from Tommy.
At WMills94, go check out the Wichita Surge team store to get this wonderful, lovely hat for our video listeners.
Any of you, either of you guys doing Snapchat, Instagram, anything?
Yeah, I've got an Instagram. I don't do Snapchat or TikTok or anything, but my Instagram is at Tommy Caster. It's pretty simple.
Don't let him kid you. You can find Tommy on TikTok at Tommy Dances at Tommy Dances.
No, that's the OnlyFans account for Tommy. It's you. Make sure you're watching that behind your.
Nobody ever wants to see that. Let's be honest.
No, I definitely don't. I am not on any video media besides this one. You're welcome. But you can follow me on Twitter at BECRIPS, BECRIPPS. Like I said, not sure what's going to break next week, but probably I'm going to be very interested to see how Wichita responds here with the Wind Surge coming up and Royals baseball. don't get swept by the Tigers. I'm going to throw so much dirt on the Royals next week if they get swept by the Tigers. I'm just letting you guys know we're backing up the dump truck next week on Kansas City if they get swept by the Tigers. Don't let it happen. Don't want to see it. So until then, for Weston, for Tommy, this is Blake. You have been watching Keeper of the Games. We'll see you next week.
Take care, guys.
You've been listening to Keeper of the Games with Tommy Castor, Weston Mills, and Blake Cripps. Don't forget to subscribe, download, and listen on all major podcast platforms like Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and more. Visit our website at KOGsports.com. Find the podcast and videos on Facebook and YouTube at Keeper of the Games. And follow the podcast on Twitter and Instagram at KOGpod. That's KOGpod.